call the meeting to order, everybody. And wake everybody up here. Invocation, Director Jenny.
President Apodaca?
Pledge of Allegiance, Director.
President Apodaca, would you like us to do the roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I wanted to go.
Director Oscui?
Here.
Director Vasquez? Director Grajeda?
Here.
Director Chacon? Director Genmi?
Here.
Director Hawkins?
Here.
Director Aceituno? President Apodaca?
Here.
Bow your heads, please. Lord, thank you for this day. Use those of us here on the board to provide the kind of leadership that we need to do in going forward, making the right decision. Make us your tools and bless us in this day. Amen.
Amen.
How do you? Please follow me. I pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's Monday, it's okay. You have certification? Four, correct? Public comments and presentations?
We have no public comment cards. We do have a presentation, a couple of presentations. The first one is for Angel Wynn. Angel, if you could come forward. Angel didn't know she was getting this award, and so she doesn't have her 5-minute acceptance speech statement. Angel, in recognition of your dedication and commitment to the district's programs, the district commends Angel Wynn for providing additional support to the budget of finance department at a time when the department is short-staffed. She stepped up to the challenges faced by the department by staying longer hours to finish deadline-driven tasks. Ensure the final project to the capital was well formatted by working extra time to review each page for accuracy and detail. In the past, Angel has taken additional new tasks such as monthly reporting, assisting with budget in the department, reconciliation of various accounts. For her continued invaluable service to the department, please present Angel with standing ovation. We also have a couple of certificates of achievement, both of which are people of mainstays of the district. First, Chris Alvarez. Chris, 9 years of dedicated service. Chris is another one over the last years, had to pinch it many times, particularly when Sharon was out and has always stepped. The recognition of your 9 years of dedicated service, certificate of achievement. And last, the lady who drives me crazy but lets us sleep night, and that's Sharon Kumar. Sharon, as you know, this is for 10 years of dedicated service, and Sharon is our contracts manager, makes sure everything is done by the book. And when you're in the middle of the process, you think, what a pain in the... But when you're done with it, you sleep better at night because you know it's done right. So Sharon, thank you for 10 years of dedicated service. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, we go to item 3, walk-on items. Do we have any?
No, sir.
Okay. Item 4, metropolitan activities, and we'll start with the directors. Dr. Vasquez, you want to comment about any activities of the day?
Sure. There's a lot going on at the Met. Wow. We've had our Spring Green day last week, where we had a number of classes that teach folks how to basically conserve water in the area of gardening and in the home, and so that was last week. And then we also had our annual was recognition for the employees. That was, I think, the week before last, and we acknowledged all of the employees that had 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of service, and we had one employee who had 41 years of service with the agency, so that was really great. We have the California water fix is a big issue. I know we've talked about that, and we're hoping to be able to bring a presentation to this board about the California water fix. And let me see what else. We actually took a trip to Sacramento, and it was a delegation of Metropolitan Water District directors, and it was very fruitful. We had Senator Kevin De Leon speak to us about water issues, and we were there to basically advocate on various pieces of legislation that we're supporting. And again, it was very productive. We had Senator Bob Hertzberg at one of our meetings. We had the woman from the California Commission, the Water Commission, I forget what her name is, Felicia Marquez. She was one of our speakers, and so it was a very productive meeting. And a lot of the legislation that we support and oppose, we do in our communications committee meeting, which I serve on. And what else? We have some issues within one of the other committees that deal with employees' concerns about some of the living conditions. So we have a lot going on there. We're working on building 10 new homes for our employees. As some of you know, those of you that have attended our inspection trips, you've had an opportunity to meet some of our staff that actually lives out on Gene Camp and in the field. And so there have been some issues with the housing, so we're rebuilding some of that and upgrading others. And so those are just a couple of things that just kind of off memory are happening right now. And of course the water supply issue, and Tammy's going to talk a little bit more in detail about that. We also had a meeting with the LA delegation about 2 weeks ago to talk about some mutual projects that we want to work on. We also updated our water conservation programs. And the other thing is we also created a new committee. It's called the Local Resources Committee. So I asked the chairman of the board to appoint me to that committee as well. So I can go on and on. There's a lot going on there, but those are some of the more important things that kind of came up.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Tammy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there is certainly a
Excuse me,
lot going
Director.
on. Yeah.
You had another Metropolitan Director, Director Gedney?
Oh, yeah. Just very quick, I was going to echo what Leticia said. One of the interesting things about the Metropolitan employees who live at the various pumping camps is you have to look at the age of when those facilities were put in, and kind of the mindset of Southern California, I guess, at the time when those were put in, which was the late 1930s. And a lot has changed from the late 1930s to today. There's a lot of different things that they're looking at doing to try and upgrade those facilities. Eventually, what you're going to get to, I think, in the industry is a much smaller workforce and a much greater level of automation out there, but you're still going to need people to work on that. So that has been kind of a very interesting and lively point of discussion at the MWD meetings in dealing with some of the aged facility issues, in this case, living conditions out there. So well put, and I'm sure next month we'll be able to report back, because this is going to take a few months to fix, but it's always important for utilities organizations to take care of their employees and do the right thing by those employees, and MWD is in the process of doing that. So it's kind of an interesting side note to what the district, all the things that Metropolitan is focused on right now. So good point, and thank you, Mr. Hunt.
So yeah, just a couple other things with respect to the items that are of interest to the Central Basin Water District is a treated water fixed charge. So this item was under review by Metropolitan. They developed a work group, been reporting on this for several months. It's since September 2016. So last month, or actually this month in April, a recommendation was brought to the Finance Committee to adopt a resolution approving the treatment charge policy principles, in addition to recommending a treatment capacity charge and implementation of the new charge. So the board adopted a resolution to approve the treatment charge policy principle, and that was the only action that they took at this time. That works out well for us. Is that it's a policy that was workable or agreeable, at least to move through the committee, and just leave it at that. Regarding the next item was the Sites Reservoir. The Metropolitan Board approved entering into a project agreement with the Sites Project Authority for participation in Phase 1 of the Sites Reservoir process. And the Sites Authority will be submitting an application for Proposition 1 grant funding next year in 2018 to cover a portion of the reservoir cost. The project would be located in Northern California and would be capable for reservoir storage between 1.3 and 1.8 million acre feet. And most of this water would be diverted, would be stored in the project reservoir, diverted from the Sacramento River during high flow events. And Metropolitan's participation will assist in preparing the information for completion of the grant application for an amount not to exceed $1.5 million. The project will be developed in a series of 5 phases, with construction potentially beginning in the year 2022, and the reservoir would be expected to be operational by the year 2029. Next item is the cyclic storage agreement. Metropolitan Board authorized General Manager to enter into cyclic storage agreements with its member agencies. These agreements would allow Metropolitan the flexibility to regulate available water supplies in local cyclic storage accounts to help meet the delivery needs of the region. And the way it would work is that Metropolitan would store water in groundwater basins with no additional put or take cost. And when water is delivered from the cyclic agreement, from the full service rate would apply, but no capacity charge would be applicable. So Central Basin currently here, we're reviewing the agreement terms to see, to determine if this would be a viable option for something that we could enter into. Some more information will be discussed at our Water Resources Committee, which is next Monday on May 1st. And last item, just to update on replenishment water deliveries. Not much of an update. The deliveries are still on hold. The county still has a hold on accepting replenishment deliveries until correspondence is received from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Metropolitan has provided letters to the Department of Fish and Wildlife on 2 separate occasions for their consideration of inclusion to notify the county that Metropolitan has been instructed to maintain normal delivery operations. So according to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Metropolitan can resume normal delivery operations because there is not a 100% proof of positive contamination in their operations. To date, we have a total of 32,689 acre-feet of replenishment water that has been delivered. So that's all we have right now. We're supposed to have this completed by the end of April. The clock is ticking, and just to avoid a capacity charge, other ways around this is we're looking at maybe cyclic agreements, but again, we're just looking at the terms and conditions of those agreements to see if it could be a workable option for us. So that's all I have, unless you have any other questions.
I have a question, Mr. Sheriff. So where's the letter that the county needs?
The county needs a letter from the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah, where is that? Have they sent it yet?
They have not, no.
Does anybody know when they're going to send it?
We're waiting. The last I heard last week was that Metropolitan sent them a second letter. Basically, they sent a draft letter suggesting how the Department of Fish and Wildlife could send it to the county. And Department of Fish and Wildlife came back and said, no, we need a letter from Metropolitan asking us, Department of Fish and Wildlife, to send a letter to the county. So they're working on the language for that. Metropolitan did give them, upon their request, a letter saying Department of Fish and Wildlife, please send a letter to the county stating, that you've instructed us that we can continue normal operation. So we're waiting for that. The talk among the staff is that they have agreed, they're in receipt of that, and they have received that information from Metropolitan. It's just a matter of them formulating that letter and sending it to the county. So that's the information that Metropolitan has given me right now.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. And I apologize, I forgot you were there.
Oh, no,
Director
it's
Geddes,
okay.
you want to make any more comments about anything?
I just wish we could get the county to accept all the work that we've already provided. Maybe next time we draft the letter for them to sign. But it's just an interesting situation where you have to depend upon regulatory agencies sometimes to do business. So, just a comment.
Thank you.
Good.
The next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone have any specific item on the consent calendar they'd like to pull so we can discuss?
I do have a question about there's on the warrant run. I see that Tetra Tech has been very busy working and doing, work on the La Mirada project. And so I did want to get a little bit more detail about the work.
Director, there was actually a billing issue with Tetra Tech, so if you look at the date, a lot of that work was done December, January.
Right, I think...
So it looks like it's a lot. And then we'll have a complete report when you get to item, where is it? Item 18. Just says we put on La Mirada Recycle Project where exactly we are right now.
Okay.
But the reason is, if you notice, there's multiple invoices on that. It was because they had a billing problem. By the time they got it corrected, they missed a run or two.
Okay, yeah, because it's $90,000 for December. For January, it's $31,000, and then there was another one for, I think, November,
Yeah, so those are,
which was, I think, another $80,000.
yeah. And
So
we'll get-
that's a lot of engineering services. So,
Well, and they've been
I'm-
reported on as we went along. And
Right.
they've done almost all, I think it's 80% of the pipeline work.
Oh, okay.
And as we'll give you a little more update, and Lonnie can brief you. We'll go into more detail when we get to item 18, which covers it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other item anyone has that want to be pulled? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the,
Consent.
the consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director El Scooey,
Yes.
Director Vasquez,
Yes?
Director Grajeda,
Yes.
Director Chacon, Director Gedney,
Yes.
Director Hawkins,
No.
Director Aceituno, President Apodaca.
Yes. Action calendar, item 11, request for authority for principal engineering and operation specialist, retired position.
Good morning, directors. One of the major strategies we have focused on this year in the strategic plan has been to reach our recycled water cells to 10,500 acre-feet by 2020. We also have a strategy that we will ensure our staffing levels and skills are appropriate to meet our goals. In order to accomplish the goal of reaching 10,500 acre-feet of recycled water by 2020, staff recommends bringing on board Mr. Norris Brandt as a retired annuitant for a temporary basis. A retired annuitant is an individual who has retired from CalPERS and can only work up to 960 hours per fiscal year with a CalPERS member agency. Mr. Brandt would be retained to work for approximately 12 hours per week. Reaching 10,500 acre-feet of recycled water by 2020 is of the utmost importance for the district. If we don't reach this goal, then capacity will be reallocated, development will be stifled, and the region's water supply will be less reliable. Mr. Brandt, having worked with the district before while our E&O manager was on leave, has the appropriate skills and experience and knowledge that the district needs to continue operations and to help us with the goal of reaching the recycled water cells. Mr. Brandt will be tasked with the following objectives: quality assurance and quality control of design review for short-term and long-term projects, review and prioritization of recycled water system capital replacement needs, analysis of potential energy savings, opportunities in operations, and technical review of proposals for the operations and maintenance contract for the recycled water system. So when we look at what it would cost the district to bring in consultants to do the same task that we'll be asking Mr. Norris to do, Mr. Brandt, excuse me, we see that on average it's going to cost us between $4,700 and $10,000 in an increased cost. If we take a look at a consultant working an hourly billable rate of $150 to $200 per hour. There is a correction in the memo that I submitted. It listed $18,000 as the cost for the next 2 months of his service. It's actually $11,500. This cost comparison does not include the cost of learning and understanding the complexities of the district's operations. Funds have been identified in our consultants line item under engineering operations to cover the cost. And per CalPERS, positions for retired annuitants must be approved by the board and added to the authorized position list. This is the reason that this is coming to you versus the general manager actually bringing on board Mr. Brandt. This action will allow Mr. Brandt to work for the remainder of the current fiscal year, that is 2 months. Any work to be done by Mr. Brandt for the following fiscal year will need to be board approved and included in the next year's budget. Unless you have any questions, the recommended motion is that the board approve the classification of Principal Engineering Operations Specialist, retired annuitant, as noted in Exhibit A, and approve the amendment position list for fiscal year 16-17 to include the position of Engineering Operations Specialist, retired annuitant position, as noted in Exhibit B.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve this action. The engineering committee reviewed this issue. I can't remember which committee it was. And I was on that committee, and we reviewed this issue, and it made sense to go ahead and do this, place this assignment through the end of the year. So I make that motion that the board move forward with this action.
Mr. President, I would second that, but I had a couple of questions before. On fiscal impact, $11,500 for the next 2 months.
That's correct.
Is that coming from the professional services line item, or where does it come from?
We've identified funds in the consultant line item that will move over to the salary line item.
Right. And I think it's just a nomenclature. We call it salary and benefits because there's one line item, but I want to make sure for an employee in this capacity, there are no benefits. It's essentially doing salary. Right.
It only includes taxes that were in workers' comp that we're required to pay, and that's included in the cost. No benefits.
Okay, thank you. Second that.
Yeah, comment.
Yes.
At this time, I don't think we should be hiring anybody until after we've worked out our budget, because we've got a budget workshop coming up, and this is just another employee that we're putting on, and I'm not sure that we were able to handle this, especially with our new budget coming up.
Yes, Director, if I might comment on that. This is for the remainder of this year. It has no impact on next year's budget. We have things we have to accomplish this year.
I don't think we should be hiring any more people right at this time.
Just to reemphasize again, could have been a consultant, could have been a part-time employee, and it's only for a short duration of 2 months. The report is suggesting that if it is supposed to be extended, it's going to be coming before the board as part of the budget process, correct?
That is
Or next
correct.
year? Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, as I said, we reviewed this issue in the engineering committee, went through the process. We've got a lot of projects on the table right now. We're looking at this through the end of this fiscal year. As we review the budget for next year and review the project for next year, we'll have the ability at that point in time to either say no on this position or keep it. The same thing with some of the projects that we're looking at. We may cut those back too. So for this year, the money was there in the budget. It wasn't going to impact it, so I felt that it's fine to go ahead and move forward with this particular issue.
Roll call, please.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Aceituno? President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 12, approval to pay November 8th, 2016 election expenses.
Good morning, directors. Yes, we did receive the invoice from the County Registrar Recorder's Office for the election November 8th, 2016, and that's for Divisions 1, 4, and 5. The amount of the invoice was $812,909 with 33 cents. Last year during the budget season, we went ahead and reached out to the county for an estimate of what they anticipated the election expense would be. They came back at $654,000, which is why we budgeted $655,000 for that. And so we are asking that the board consider appropriating to election expense from the Central Basin Reserves an amount of $157,909 with 33 cents to cover for that. And so we are bringing that recommendation for you for your consideration. I do want to inform you that during the committee meeting, our committee members did make a recommendation for staff to reach out to the county so that we could better understand how they go about the calculation for election expense. As of Friday, they have submitted some information to us that we are in the process of reviewing, and we will be bringing that information to you. At this point, it's just numbers that they've sent to us, along with their methodology for calculating those numbers, and at which time, once we review it, if we have additional questions, they will entertain potentially a meeting with the district.
Let me tell directors that in my 4 elections here, it has gone up every time. So it's something that we don't have any control over, but we're trying to see how, because it's really got more expensive as you can see.
And Mr. Chair, this item, as Maggie stated, went before the Administrative and Ethics Committee, which I apologize, I made an incorrection. The Inuit position earlier went before the Administration and Ethics Committee. I sit on both committees. I sit on that committee and the Engineering Committee. The committee reviewed this. The district received a letter back in March stating what the estimated costs would be. This is not something that staff missed. They budgeted exactly what approximately what the information they were given to them by the county, and it's just something that happened, and we just need to pay for it. And I make a motion to go ahead and pay this, approve this item.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Aceituno? President Apodaca?
Yes.
Thank you, directors.
Item 13, correction of MWD readiness to serve in Central Basin meter services charge bill.
This is an item that was our issue. Every year Metropolitan sets their rate for their readiness to serve charge, and it goes into effect in January of each year, so it's split between our fiscal year. And it comes out sometime in April or May, and so we have to adjust our budget. Last year, we actually had a perfect opportunity to adjust it mid-year because we did our mid-year rate adjustment. And could you move the slide? There it is. If you'll notice what's happened, and kudos, by the way, to Chris Legand and Tammy Herlihy for catching this for us. We had neglected to reduce our RTS charge, and as such, and it was a significant drop from Metropolitan in the RTS charge that went into effect in January. So we have already collected in 3 months the revenue we need for 6 months within a very close margin. So what we'd like to do on this item is stop collecting the revenue right now for the next 3 months. We'll still end up with a surplus of about $7,000, and we will calculate then in July, when it's all complete, what the balance is and refund that to people. And that'll come back to the board probably in August for a refund discussion. And again, this is one of these things with the Metro, it's just a straight pass-through. We're not supposed to make money on this. It's just supposed to recover the cost of the Met charge. The second item on here is our meter service charge, and this is the charge that we put to our member agencies based on their connected capacity to Metropolitan. And it's so many dollars per connected CFS. For some reason, there is a $1 error that occurred. The correct information was given at the time by Chris and Ned. It came up to $81. For some reason, we implemented the rates. It was $80. It's a $1 off reading. It was called to our attention by one of our member agencies, which I thought was very nice. And we'd like to increase that by $1 for the remaining 3 months, just so that we have our bills there accurately. I don't think we need to go back and collect the small amount that we're missing with this. But anyway, this is, like I said, just errors on our part, of which we'll do a better job of checking going forward. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone?
Kevin, will you notify all of the agencies that would receive a refund on this? Have
Yes.
you done it already?
Yeah.
Or you will be doing it, or you've done it already?
No, we brought it up in the Purveyor workshop that this was happening, and we are going to send out a letter once it's approved by the board.
I see.
As to how we're going to do it and what they can expect. We've had one of them request that we do it this way rather than run it out to the end of the year and give them refunds. They basically don't like us working with their money. It's there, so stopping it now is the right thing to do. And then the $7,000 will be reallocated, at the end of the year. We'll have an accounting on that.
Kevin, on that RTS, are we giving up $1 million there?
No, we're not giving up anything. This is a bill we get from Metropolitan that we just passed through.
Because I just seen a 7,000 on top of because it goes 1 million and then we go to another million, but then there's a 1.7 and you said we're giving up the RTS, so are we giving up that whole $1 million?
No, what we're giving up, we have already billed $1 million roughly that this charge is. We've actually collected $1.7 million. $1 million plus 7,000. What we'd like to do is stop billing at this time since we've collected it all, and at the end of the fiscal year, give back the 7,000.
So,
we
okay, so
overcollected.
we're this is from now until budget time?
Exactly. Now
That's
until
all this- okay.
now until the end of June 30th.
Because I was reading as we were giving it all up.
No, just stopping. We're just stopping what we've done, and then the 7,000 will be reallocated at the end.
Okay.
Kevin, it's also your recommendation that instead of going back for that $1, just move forward with the remainder of the year and collect it there?
Yeah.
Okay. I make the motion to approve this item as submitted.
Second.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Aceituno? President Apodaca?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Item 14, approval of Nusselman invoice for March 2017 in the amount of $39,198.60.
And in this case, as you recall, we had an agreement with the board that any Nusselman bills over $25,000 we would bring to the board for review. This is actually not in the disbursements yet, so we got it in time. Usually you'll see this when it's on the pay sheet. But what it is this is the invoice for March, which will be coming to you in the demand list next month. The reason why it's over is the same as last time. The reason why it was over, the Belkey lawsuit. There is 18,000 some odd covered in the Belkey lawsuit against the district for the installation of the new directors in that. We believe this item should be wrapped up by May 15th. There's a hearing at that time scheduled that we believe will put it to rest. We think it's been a colossal waste of time. The lawsuit by Mr. Belkey continues to waste this district's resources, but it is what it is. So we just want to let the board know and have approval to put it on the demand list for this. This is what it's about. There's no other item, other than that, our costs are running exactly what they should at about $20,000, $21,000. And Mr. Smith is available if you have any additional questions.
Questions, anyone?
I do have questions. I'm not sure if they're more appropriate for maybe a closed session discussion, but I would like to get a status update on the the case. I actually I got online and I checked the status from the court records that are uploaded. But I do have a question with respect to other issues, so I'm not sure if it's a discussion that should be had in closed session, and if it is, I wanted to request that we have a discussion or get an update in closed session.
I can give
Since it's
a general
litigation.
overview of the status right now.
Okay.
For open session, if you'd like.
Sure.
So but basically, as you recall, on February 24th, the judge denied their request for a temporary restraining order that would unseat the appointed directors. On April 3rd, the response of the district and the response of General Manager Kevin Hunt were due. So that's what this 18,000 is for. Nosman prepared a motion to dismiss with the demurrer memorandum of points and authorities, a motion to strike the allegations, declarations that the meet and confer process required by the California Code of Civil Procedure were satisfied, and then a request for judicial notice to admit into evidence the necessary evidence to support the motions. So as Kevin mentioned, the hearing on that motion to dismiss is scheduled for May 15th. So if the motion to dismiss is successful, the case will be over. The one wrinkle there is the plaintiff's attorney in mid-April filed an amended complaint. So the judge has discretion to authorize the filing of the amended complaint. The judge has not yet. When we checked the court's calendar on Friday, it was not accepted at that time. If the judge does accept the amended complaint, the May 15th hearing date might be continued to a later time to allow opposition brief to the amended complaint. If the judge doesn't allow it, then the plaintiffs will have to serve an opposition to the motion to dismiss that we filed on April 3rd. That will be due in early May, and then about 10 days or so later, our reply brief will be due, and then we'll go to court on May 15th and get the judge's decision at that time.
Okay. Since this was, these actions were taken as a result of a law that was passed, the state is also mentioned in the lawsuit. What is the state's position? Have they put anything in writing with respect to what their position is? And will they have any involvement in this case? Whether it's because I noticed in the paperwork that Nosman is representing us, and we have an attorney from your office that goes to court on this matter. Is the state present during those proceedings, and are they going to reimburse us for these expenses? Have there been any discussions with them? Who's the contact person at the state that you're dealing with?
Yeah, I think you're getting too much detail.
That's a closed session. What I can say in open session on that is that, as you mentioned, the state is a separately named defendant. She has allegations specifically against the district as well, but the state is a separate defendant. However, the plaintiffs still have not served the state. I called the state representative last week, have you been served? And they said, no, you have not been served. So that's another ground that the court can dismiss the action for on May 15th. But the state's position at this time is they have not been formally served. They've been named but not served, and until they're actually served, they're not having anything to do with the lawsuit.
Oh, I see.
So, counsel, the only defendant at the present time is the district.
The district.
That's why we're in the court.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Were there, okay, so are they going to, have there been any discussions about getting reimbursed for the legal expenses?
Not with the state yet, but there is that one, all of the costs of implementing this bill, as it says in the bill, are reimbursable. So we're assuming this is a reimbursable cost, and we'll go into the about $100,000 that we've already incurred in implementing the bill. That'll go out the end, we bill that each fiscal year, and that'll go out this, at the end of this fiscal year. Right, Councilor?
90 claim, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the big claim goes in then. When we get paid, we'll be a couple of years down the road, but we'll put it in.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have a second on that?
We need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the announcement invoices for March 2017 in the amount of $39,198.60.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Director Roscoe?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Abstain.
Director Aceituno? President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 15, discussion and information about the recycled water distribution system operations and maintenance contract request for proposal.
Yes, good morning, directors. I'll be providing an information-only update for the request for proposals for to procure a contractor for the district's recycled water distribution system. I would like to notify you that the development of the RFP is still underway. Staff have received comments from legal counsel, Liberty Utilities, board members, and have made comments internally, and these comments are still currently under review. And it is anticipated that there will be additional revisions this week, and staff do plan to have the final version completed to be ready to be advertised by the end of this week. And so to begin, we have some slides to go through today. The first is a map of our system, which consists of over 80 miles of recycled water pipeline with 3 district-owned pump stations and 1 pump station owned by the city of Cerritos, and this brings supply to the southern system. The backbone of the system was constructed in the 1990s and has been expanded over the last 25 years to the current state, as you see here. When the distribution system was first constructed, it was given 2 names. One name for the northern half, which is known as the Rio Hondo distribution system, and one for the southern half, which is known as the Century system. We have documented the most recent history for both systems, beginning with the Northern Rio Hondo system here. Every modification since 2005 is listed on this slide. The Rio Hondo contract was publicly advertised in 2014, with the contract switching hands through this process. A contract was awarded to Liberty Utilities, who was Park Water at that time, and who was also managing the Southern Century system. Here on this slide, we have documentation of the recent contract history for Liberty Utilities and the Century system, which is the southern system. In 2015, the Century contract was set to expire in the summertime, and because the district was happy with Liberty's performance managing the entire system at this point, and also because having one contractor managing the system came with additional benefits, Liberty's contract for the Century system was extended to align with the Rio Hondo contract. And so this was also because staff planned to advertise the work as one contract for the entire system in the future at that time in 2017 when both contracts expired, and so we're at that point now. When this process started, there were a couple things that prompted district staff to look for consulting services to help with the RFP process. As listed here on this slide, this was the first time the district would be advertising one RFP for the entire distribution system. The size of the contract value for this work, the size of district staff versus the current workloads for the departments, and staff experience level with the O&M contract of this nature. Consulting services with R. CMAC and Associates were obtained for this work in the amount of $20,000. And CMAC was chosen for his extensive experience with contractual operations and maintenance processes, and this is for water-related systems. This also includes contract risk analysis. CMAC has extensive industry knowledge, and he will know how to attract more potential bidders. And so obtaining more proposals through this process was one of staff's main goals. This next slide shows a list of the major changes to the previous RFP and the RFP currently under development. And so a few of the main differences we'd like to mention are the 5-year term in lieu of the 3-year term, a less specific and detailed scope of work, a monthly flat rate to cover all general O&M services, and this is versus the time and materials method with a markup, a separate repair and replace or R&R budget of $100,000. I would also like to point out that district staff or the contractor selected will be following district procurement policy, and this is for use of the R&R funding, and there will always be pre-approval from staff. And so I'd also like to point out that larger items, and this is such as purchasing new pumps for the pump stations, are not part of the repair and replacement budget, and that this budget is simply to fix issues that need to be fixed on the distribution system throughout the year. There are additional changes that are not currently shown on this slide, and we're reviewing those at this point. And so the changes that are currently under review, we will be providing details on at the Engineering and Operations Committee, which is taking place on May 4th. Briefly going over a few of those changes that we've noticed to date is insurance modifications and requiring a payment or performance bond. This slide shows you the current schedule planned for the RFP process, and as I mentioned earlier, staff plan to finalize the RFP this week with the goal to have it advertised on May 1st, and again, we will be providing more details at the May 4th committee. And so for the RFP process, we will conduct a pre-proposal conference meeting and tours, and that's for those who are interested in seeing our facilities, and this should take place between May 16th and May 19th. The RFP will be advertised for 45 days, which does exceed policy. Proposals will be due June 16th of 2017. Evaluations and interviews June 19th through June 30th, and we hope to have a recommendation for the board before you at the July 24th board meeting. And so going through this process, the schedule will require a Liberty Utilities contract extension through the end of September, and we will be starting discussions with them regarding that matter. And that concludes my update, and I will take questions.
Questions, anyone?
Mr. Chair, I have a number of questions. You said you received responses from Liberty and who else? And from some of the directors?
Legal counsel, yes, some of the directors, Liberty, and then internal staff have had some comments as well.
And you say that you're going to try to address all those questions by the end of the week?
We're going to try to have them all addressed, yes.
But you're also going to try to send the RFP out next week or by the end of the week? Or
Monday of next week, correct.
Okay. I'd like to see those responses. Do you know if the contractor needs 45 days? I'd rather take more time to review the RFP than provide them a response time to get it back unless they need the 45 days to respond back.
The complexity of bidding for an O&M for a 5-year contract and projecting it out, usually they require, if you're going to get new bidders, they need time.
45 days.
Now, in terms of evaluating the RFP, it is quite common that an RFP goes out and there are addendum to modify certain things. So we will be constantly reviewing this thing through probably the pre-proposal meeting at that time. When do we stop questions on this?
24 hours before the proposals are due, so that would be June 15th.
So we go through, but we'll probably, the majority of the comments should be in by the time we have the meeting in mid-May. So I believe that gives us ample time to do it concurrently. Again, I wish we'd started a month sooner, but, you know. But I think that we can still keep the 45 days and still allow ample time for review that way.
Okay.
Are there any more questions?
I have one question regarding the term. It's section 6(4), I believe. It says that the term is 5 years, as you indicated, but it also provides for an option to renew or extend the contract at the district's discretion.
That is correct, and we're still reviewing the comments, but this is something that legal counsel was looking into, and so there was an option for extending the contract for an additional 5 years beyond the first term, and so I don't have all the details about extending that contract, but I can have that ready for you if you'd like.
Well, what I would like to suggest is that any extension beyond the initial term, beyond a year by year, up to a certain number of years. So if it's an additional 5 years, every year it has to be coming back before the board to get approved.
Yeah, Jackie, that can be done. The reason you try and have a long first term is the mobilization costs.
Right.
When those are done, you can't do it
5
year by year. So I'll run that by our consultant, but I think that could be doable.
The problem is there's another issue here, and I don't know if our Isn't there an issue with the PUC and having them understand whether or not they're going to get the contract and timing on all that?
Well, that has to do with Liberty's ability to put in a rate schedule. Again, that's simply because it's coming to an end. Rate schedules go in 3-year cycles, and we don't know who the winner is going to be or what their cycles are. So it's kind of hard to predict that. But it is, I mean, from a staff standpoint, we would prefer to do it for longer periods, obviously, because it's a fairly significant undertaking every year to review. But on the other hand, from a manager's standpoint, I liked holding their feet to the fire after the first 5 years. So it's done both ways, and I think that's something we can answer down the road because it's at the board discretion. You can renew it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. It's your call at any time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying that we should take that into consideration. That's something that I learned in terms of what we extend that for. Generally, a year makes sense.
Yeah.
But if there's an issue with that, then we've got to take a look at that because it might be a little longer than that.
So when we get near the end of the 5, whoever the selected vendor is, when we get near the end of the 5 years, we can see if that's an issue and whether it should be a 2 year instead of 1 year at that time.
It could be that we have the option to extend the contract for a period of time, and we don't know whether that's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 years or whatever it is, which is it's more flexible than extending it another 5 years. Would you agree with that one?
Well, what I had suggested, and this is something that council will look at, is to give some level of assurance also to the contractor by saying that there is a possibility to extend it, but it has to be a date certain. So let's say for another 5 years, as you suggested. But instead of just giving them one swoop of a extension of 5 years, you will just do it year by year, up to 5 years additional.
Okay.
Yeah. And I believe, and I'll have the council check, I believe we still have in there the option to cancel at any time.
There is a termination
There's
without
a termination clause.
clause in the contract, so that's good.
Yeah.
Questions, anybody?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I did actually, I'm sorry, I did write down a question. It was simple, you can probably answer it from there. Is this an updated map of the recycled water pipeline?
Yes.
Is it? Okay, great. Is there any way we can get one, an updated map printed, a bigger one, so that when we meet with folks, we have something that, that's accurate?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. And then also in our literature, when we go out and visit folks, our legislative offices, if we can get an updated one for that purpose as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll work out the details with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 16, state and federal legislative update.
Alrighty, good morning, directors. I'll start off with the state legislative calendar with the dates remaining in April. April 28th is the last day for policy committees to hear and report fiscal bills for referral to fiscal committee. So essentially, any bill that's going to have a price tag on it this year needs to move out of policy committee by the end of this week. So we'll get a better sense of how legislation's moving through this session. Also, a couple of things to note as a reminder, this is the first year of a 2-year legislative cycle, so although there's bills that are moving through, they still have until next year to get through the cycle before being considered dead for the year. Also of note is that the Assembly Committee on Water, Parks, and Wildlife will be meeting tomorrow to discuss and take action on several water-related bills. That's something that we're keeping an eye on, so we're going to have a staff member participate via, I think they stream their hearing, so we're going to keep an eye on that so we can update our legislative matrix and keep you apprised of anything that we should be keeping an eye on. Attached to your memo is our state legislative matrix. The number of bills that we track is changed based upon a number of factors, such upon amendments and other factors. So if a bill's been gutted and amended to deal with something that's completely unrelated to the issue, so that just gives you a sense of what we track. To keep apprised of legislative issues, we participate in a variety of different venues. In addition to our own staff research and being engaged with legislative offices, we participate in the MWD Legislative Coordinators Group, which is a phone call that we have bi-weekly to discuss bills that they're tracking and also meet on an annual basis. We also participate in the California Special Districts Legislative Committee, and those are meetings that take place on a monthly basis. Also, phone calls with prior to their meeting with the Aqua Legislative Committee. There are several key water and water-related and special district governance issues in play this year. Those issues include conservation/water use efficiency, issues of water quality, 2 park bonds, issues to modify the definition of stormwater or sewer with respect to Proposition 218, potable reuse, consolidation, the Los Angeles River, and several Delta-related legislation. What we'll do for the purpose of this meeting is what we did prior to this is we went through our matrix and saw where bills were at in the process, whether they had moved forward, whether they were set for hearing, or whether their respective authors had canceled a request for hearing. So what we'll do is go through the exhibit, but not necessarily go through every bill, because not every bill is making progress at this moment. Assembly Bill 18 by Eduardo Garcia from the Coachella Valley, Chairman of the Assembly Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee, is a $3.1 billion park bond. This bill is in the Senate awaiting assignment. This bill has a companion bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 5 by Kevin De Leon, which is a $3 billion water bond. We're keeping an eye on this because the Senate version actually includes $1 billion of funding for water-related projects. So we're keeping an eye on this. One bill that we're following that actually the hearing was canceled but is of interest to stakeholders here in the Central Basin Service Area is Assembly Bill 272 by Mike Gibson, which briefly I'll share with you. Conditions the awarding of funding to an urban water supplier in Southeast Los Angeles County that does not have the sufficient technical, managerial, or financial capacity. It conditions that funding on the participation of a public water agency that does meet those standards. It would also authorize an urban water supplier in Southeast Los Angeles County to consult with the state board to determine whether a number of different venues are available. Consolidation, an extension of service, or administrative managerial services support is required. But as stated, this bill actually was put on hold, or not put on hold, but the bill was set for hearing, but the author did cancel the hearing. So that's a bill that we're going to keep our eye on and keep the board apprised of. Moving forward, a bill that's not getting as much attention but did want to share with you is Assembly Bill 554 by Jordan Cunningham from the San Luis Obispo area. Would establish a goal to desalinate 300,000 acre-feet of drinking water per year by 2025 and 500,000 acre-feet of drinking water by the year 2030. This bill has been moving forward and it's set for hearing in Assembly appropriation, so it's already made its way past its policy committee. Another bill that we're keeping an eye on is Assembly Bill 574 by Bill Quirk, who serves as chair of the Committee on Environmental Safety and Toxic Materials. Assembly Bill 574, the goal would be to promote water recycling by categorizing potable reuse alternatives and by establishing a pathway and time frame for raw water augmentation. This bill is set for hearing in the Assembly Committee on Water, Parks, and Wildlife. And this is set for hearing tomorrow, so this is something that we're keeping an eye on. Also set for hearing is, give me 1 second, is, a bill that's been recently amended is Assembly Bill 885 by Blanca Rubio, who's doing a number of water-related bills. This bill was dealing with water quality in schools. This bill has been recently amended, so we'll make sure to research through those amendments and provide you an update should it be necessary or germane to the work that we're doing. Another bill that is set for hearing is Assembly Bill 1000 by Laura Friedman, which would require the State Energy Resources Conservation and Development Commission to certify innovative water conservation and water loss detection and control technologies to meet that criteria. One of the things that I do want to point out is with regards to tomorrow's hearing, they're going to be going through their list of water-related bills that they're looking at, but they're also taking a look at bills that are related to the water as a conservation as a way of life, and these are including bills that are reflective of the governor's goals, but also some bills that were drafted in response to what the governor's trying to do with regards to water use efficiency and conservation. So that's something we're keeping an eye on. Several bills by Assemblymember Friedman, who used to be a member on the Met Board, are part of that. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. And then I'm moving down. There are several bills such as Assembly Bill 1668 by Assemblymember Friedman, which pertains to the urban water management planning. This bill has also recently been amended. Assembly Bill 1669 pertaining to urban water conservation standards by Assemblymember Laura Friedman has also been recently amended. These bills were amended after the governor had released a trailer bill with regards to what the governor and the state board's goals were with regards to water use efficiency. Another bill that's been of interest has been Senate Bill 231 by Bob Hertzberg, which defines sewer for the purpose of Proposition 218. And to give you some context, current law, as we may know, exempts property-related fees for water, sewer, and refuse collection from the voter approval requirement of 218. This bill would treat fees for stormwater like other water and sewer fees. The author, essentially, in his statement, has stated that he wants to make it easier for local governments to levy fees to pay for stormwater cleanup. Another bill doing with is Senate Bill 589 by Ed Hernandez, dealing with municipal separate stormwater systems, would require the state board to establish financial capability assessment guidelines and require the LA board to use guidelines in a pilot project to assess the capability of municipalities to implement the MS4 permits. This bill has been referred to the Senate Committee on Appropriations. And those are some of the larger scale bills that we're keeping an eye on because they may be of interest not only to the district but to our retailers and their operations. Last month, just briefly, we hosted our caucus was with Assemblymember Mike Gibson, who is a member of the Central Basin Legislative Delegation. This was a very well-attended event that the attendance exceeded over 50 people, and really the purpose was to discuss AB 272, and it was good for us to get several retail agencies and different interested parties to have a discussion with Assemblymember Gibson on this. We are still in conversation with the author as this bill develops. As stated, the bill has been, the hearing was canceled at the request of the author. And lastly, with regards to some of the stuff that we're doing with the California Special Districts Association, at the Little Hoover Commission last year had expressed interest in taking a look at special districts. At the most recent hearing in February, and just to give you a context, one of the commissioner members commented that special districts should have a sunset date. The suggestion being that special districts should be required to have an election every 10 years to reauthorize their existence. So clearly that's something of interest to the Special Districts Association and special districts throughout the state. The purpose of the February meeting really was for the commission to review a staff report on special districts following 3 public hearings that were held on the issue last year. Prior to this February meeting, the expectation was that the commission was going to take up a final report in the spring of 2017. After this hearing, the commission staff was directed to table this report and consider holding a 4th hearing on special districts later in the year. And just to give you some context on where the conversation is going, the Special Districts Association provided feedback that there was concerns over maybe taking this approach, and really that maybe looking at how LAFCO's role in looking at a district organization might be, to kind of see that might be a different approach, being that LAFCOs get input from stakeholders in a local and public process. There's analysis conducted, and ultimately local residents provide input on whether an organization should continue or no longer continue. Moving forward, the Special Districts remains engaged on this issue with the Little Hoover Commission. The idea now is that there may be formulation of an agenda for a fourth public hearing, or depending upon the feedback that's received from the Little Hoover Commission members, a small roundtable with interested parties. These are discussions that are ongoing, and expect for progress on either that roundtable discussion on special districts and or a fourth public hearing to take place later this year. So those are some of the major legislative issues or public policy issues that we're keeping apprised of. Certainly welcome any thoughts, feedback, or questions from the board.
Mr. Chair, I have some questions regarding this matrix.
Yes.
I think you said, Joseph, that you're on the phone or attend legislative updates from ACWA?
Yes, we participate.
Just say yes or no.
Yes.
What about MWD?
Yes.
And what about California Special Districts Association?
Yes.
Are there any others?
We have not been as active, but we do participate from time to time on the Southern California Water Committee legislative phone calls.
Do any of them provide their input on which bills they're in favor of, or in an opposed position, or in a watch position?
Yes, they do.
Have you ever thought about putting that information on this matrix?
Not on the matrix. We've provided oral updates, but if that's a suggestion from the board, we're welcome to.
I'd like to see that, Mr. Chair, so that we see what our fellow colleagues are doing in the industry, and it allows us to focus more keenly on certain bills. That if there's someone like us that's either opposing a bill or approving a bill, we can look at that and zero on it and find out if it's in our best interest to look at it more closely and decide whether or not we want to jump on the bandwagon with that. So I'd like to see that. Plus, I think it would help us zero in on some of these bills. There's a lot of bills this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, just I think at least 30 that we're tracking going into May. So, Dr. Grada, you're correct in that it is an opportunity to hone in on maybe larger issues.
Thank you, Joseph.
Certainly. Thank you.
No problem. Can you amend that?
We'll make sure to amend the matrix. Thank you.
Any other questions, anyone? If not, item 17, recycle water pipeline projects, environmental report.
Good morning, directors. I'll be giving an update on the environmental documentation for two of our CIP projects. For the La Mirada Recycle Water Expansion Project, we have Aspen Environmental Group. They provided a draft initial study with an environmental determination being a mitigated negative declaration. Staff has provided comments as well as compiled comments from the design team in Tetra-Tech. We delivered the comments to Aspen last week, and so far on the schedule, we are expected to have the mitigated negative declaration finalized and ready for distribution by May 15th. For the Gateway Cities Recycle Water Expansion Project, we have KS Dunbar and Associates preparing the environmental documentation. Last week, they delivered a draft initial study and mitigated negative declarations for the cities of Southgate, Linwood, and Bell Gardens. Staff is currently reviewing that, and we'll provide comments for them this week. So far, these are all the updates. If you guys have any, if directors have any questions, please let me know.
Questions?
I was not available for the, I think it's the engineering committee that basically gets updates on the La Mirada project.
Okay.
So if I could just get a real quick update on what Tetra Tech is doing,
Okay, that'll
the
be
La Mirada project?
That'll be the next
That's item
item.
18, directors. We said
Oh, number 18,
before.
oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Item 18.
Okay.
Item 18, we already have some questions about that. In the board item as presented, one of the things I did present was a cost matrix on the construction cost of the project. And with Tetra Tech specifically, we've been working with them. They're at about 80-85% complete. So one of the things is they've done a lot of the front-end work. And if you look under the, as annotated, the services, it's planning, engineering, environmental, construction management, and our construction management, project management. But they have completed 90% of their work, 80-90% of their work. So the original estimate was, we, the staff, went back, we sharpened our pencils, we value engineered the project because we reduced it, and it's been put on hold right now, subject to garnering and being successful up in Sacramento. Kevin will be going up to Sacramento to hopefully secure construction funding for this project. So it's on hold somewhat at this point in time. Additionally, with hydraulic analysis that was done, a reservoir and pump station are needed, and that'll be brought forward to the committee here in a week. Those items have not been presented yet to the committee, so we'll have a robust discussion at committee about the reservoir and pump station. So I presented this in a little bit different way with this matrix. It shows that with a reduction in pipeline length in the project from approximately 40,000 feet of pipe to 29,000 feet of pipe, there's a reduction in the design. And so you see that in the first item from about 2.6 million to 9.6 million. So you can see there that the costs have come down, but the work for that was continued until that time. Now we reduced that. Right now, the cost and financing portion of that will be worked with over the next month and a half or so, but initially we'll go out for construction funding, additional Prop 1 construction funding with respect to that. So the work was done by Tetra Tech. You were asking about that, Director Vasquez. That concludes my item. Any questions?
Yeah, with respect to these projects, are we before the board votes on moving forward with identifying this as a project, do we have like a projection of what the design is going to cost, kind of the breakdown of what we're going to spend on the project at every phase?
Director, if I might. We have right now, the board has authorized the engineering design of primarily the pipeline section. When we did the initial study, we go back in the engineering, we discussed that we uncovered that we needed a pump station and a reservoir. We got a proposal, but we have not taken it to the board to do that work. We've held that work in abeyance until such time as we put together the elements that are needed to fund this project. That includes not just the possible grant one funding from Prop 1, not just the low interest loan from the state revolving loan fund, but also the Met LRP renewal. Those are three things we need. Absent, in addition to that, we're looking to see whether Suburban Water, who's the retailer there, is interested in moving some of that capital into their capital base, which is how private companies get reimbursed. So right now, the design part of this, from management standpoint, is going to be on hold for months to come until we get these questions answered. There will be activity because we still have some planning work to do in terms of the operation of the system. There's some questions come up about, okay, do we move water this way or the other, and how does it affect this design? So we'll be making some internal, but you won't be hearing any design progress on this for the next 3-4 months. We're going to have it on hold that long as we sort out where we are. That starts, I believe you're coming up with me tomorrow, Director. And that starts tomorrow, the process. We already have our application in, but it's a complex process because you have 3 parts of funding, possibly a 4th that you have to get integrated. So it'll be on hold for, you won't see any more progress on this other than planning work for the next 3 to 4 months. Is that correct, Lonnie?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess really my point is that we're properly planning planning as we move forward with these massive projects, because we're spending a lot of money on the initial design, and I think just the warrant run that I looked at for this meeting, it's about $300,000 that we spent. So as we plan these, we want to make sure that if we're going to spend this amount of money on planning and designing, that it's going to be a project that we're going to see through, and not that we're just paying or spending money for planning and design, and then we say, oh, well, you know what, this is not going to be possible. So if we can just kind of create a long-term plan with respect to how we're going to carry out these projects, I think would be great.
Director, and not to be content, but we actually do have a long-range plan. The problem is these are complex technical projects. If we knew at the time we went in that we needed a pipeline and pump station, we would have put them in.
Right.
It doesn't until we estimated what the demands were, ran a model to see that we determined that. We then went back and saw if there's, so it's a complicated process.
Right.
The other thing it shows is, I put this out there for the staff, the importance of getting your billings in on time so that it doesn't look like all of a sudden the directors are getting hit with a $300,000 bill when it's really $300,000 bills that should have been done all the way along. So and then we have to work, we can do with what the contractor will give us, but we are not interested in getting ahead. This one, we were surprised. We didn't think we needed the reservoir and the pump station. When it came in, we put a hold on it, and we informed the board, I believe this is 2 months ago, that it's been on hold. I believe it's been 2 months that the design's been on hold, at least. So, anyway, but we'll give you at the next engineering committee, and we'll do a report with the chronology of the events and how it happened, because I think it's important to prevent something like this happening in the future. But we couldn't have anticipated this. We simply didn't have enough information at the time. We thought we just needed a pipeline.
Okay, good. And I just, I think this is a great project, and the Metropolitan Water District, interestingly, created this Local Resources Committee, as I mentioned earlier, because local resources, providing a local source of water for the region, not just the Central Basin area, but the Metropolitan Water District area, is something that that a lot of water agencies are now focusing on. And so I'm glad to see that Central Basin had this vision, almost 20 years ago to start creating this local source. This is, in my opinion, one of our greatest assets, and I support, I certainly support expanding and getting more people connected to recycled water. So I certainly support this. I want to make sure that, we're just being fiscally responsible and that we're properly planning, as we reach out. So thank you for, thanks to everyone for all the work that you're doing on this.
Let me add that the engineering committee, which Director Grajeda chairs, has proposed in the future matrices on all our projects. So in other words, you'll see step by step, and I follow since they're the most experienced here on that. You'll be getting the full detail.
Thank you. Thanks.
General Manager Hunt, it is my understanding that the engineering division is putting together the matrix that you're referring to. It's a complex tool in order to evaluate the cost-benefit ratio of each project before you get engaged into essentially getting into the design phase or any other thing, right?
Well, we do, again, you always work with the information we have. We do a benefit cost before we start on every project. But then when we come in, when there's any sort of surprises, we do it again. And that's what happened in this one. We then did a good job of value engineering. Lonnie, and particularly Jackie in this case, went through and looked at all the tentacles going off of the main feeder. How could we shrink it down? Did the value engineering to shrink the pipeline system, but it's not enough to compensate for the cost and the operation and maintenance costs of the reservoir and pump station. And I personally get involved in that because that's one of my technical expertise is in economic analysis. We think this project is still a good project, but it requires that we have the sources of funding defined. The Met LRP is a big one. It can be 340 or 4 up to 450 or something like that per acre foot. The issue of getting a Prop 1 grant versus all of it being borrowed money. When we have that definition, we will then take the whole gamut of cost and sources of funds and operation and maintenance cost, and then show it to the board and show them the cost revenue benefit before we go ahead. But this turned out to be a more complex project than we thought, unlike the next one we're going to talk about, which is still pipelines. Right. This one turned into a lot more complicated.
So may I have a quick understanding, with your help, as to how did we manage to drop down 25% of the pipeline cost? Was it through horizontal alignment adjustments, or what was it?
Well, what it was is it was a reduction in pipe lengths that, I'll just say, some of these ancillary tentacles that were feeding certain parks and the like, they were judged to be, I don't want to say marginal, but they were not as valuable as others.
But as you go out you have your main line, and then the lines go out to Silver Park or Community Park. The original design covers everything possible within the reach of that system. You then look at it, and you should do it all the way along and see, what's the benefit cost of that thing? Does the supply, the demand for that area pay for the cost of the pipeline to get it? In some of these, it was clear, yes, of course it does. In others, it was clear it didn't. They were too long to give too small a demand. And Jackie did a great job going through and getting that done and value engineering each single one on it. That also caused a small shrinkage in the overall size of the thing. It's interesting when you look at our system, one of the skeletons that's in our closet there's one section of pipe where we're paying a $32,500 a year easement to LA Water and Power for a piece of pipe that sells $35,000 worth of water a year. Those are the type of things we want to avoid in the future.
So what is the time horizon in the analysis that we use?
Well, usually it was a 20-year.
Is that 20 year?
30-year period.
30 years.
Yeah, that's because that's the bond period. Now it's 30 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
But included is, for example, the mid-LRP payments are either 15 or 25 years. Your bonds are either 20. So we use the longer period, but the revenue sources are what they are in their contracts.
Thank you.
The next item is mine also, President Apodaca. This has to do with the three projects that we have going on, the pipeline projects in Linwood, Bell Gardens, and Southgate. I'm happy to report to you that we do have 100% design plans and specifications for the Linwood project. It's in very good shape, very good consultant. The Bell Gardens project, a little more challenging, and we look to have that done. I'd said in the item by end of April, but it might be a week or two into May. But it's also coming up, and they're finally catching up and doing remarkable catch-up and trying to get that one done. And finally, the Southgate recycled water pipeline, very happy to report that that one is being worked on very diligently by the consultant there, and look to have that one completed by June 30th. Look to have all three of them done, and this is really important. There's a disadvantaged communities grant that we have, and get this money, get the projects underway within these disadvantaged communities. They're looking forward to it, each one of them. So we're really pleased to report this to you. Do you have any questions? I'd be more than happy to answer.
Bonnie, you mentioned Linwood is 100%. What is the percentage for Bell Gardens and Southgate?
Bell Gardens, I would say right now, is at about 70-80%, and Southgate is a little over 50% now. And Southgate was the laggard in that they made some significant changes to it going out the door. But boy, they have really busted themselves to catch up, and they're doing a remarkably good job. So really pleased with that.
Does Bell Gardens need a pump station?
No, they do not.
Okay.
There was some talk about that. That is not a part of this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 20, California water fix update.
Good morning, directors. This is really just part of an effort to keep the board informed of the status of this very important project that, California Water Fix, you're all, I think, aware of what it is. And this presentation was given to the Water Resources Committee, so this will look familiar to them. But it's just really to keep you apprised of this. We know you all get a lot of questions about this, and as this project moves towards a decision, you'll get more and more questions, I'm sure. So this is really just our effort to keep the board apprised of how the project's moving ahead and the process that MWD is going through. And as they move through that process, we'll continue to monitor and bring information to you in a timely fashion. So these slides are from MWD's last committee meeting on this, and they have another meeting tomorrow, so there may be some updates. But this is really the way they intend to move through this process. They're proposing to produce 3 white papers, technical papers on the project, one on the physical infrastructure itself, Just so you all aware, but this is basically what's commonly known as the Twin Tunnels project to replumb the California Delta. And so the first white paper will be on the physical infrastructure itself. The second white paper, and I'll go into a little more detail, will be on the operational criteria under which the project will operate, and then the third would be on cost and finance, and then bring that all together with a board workshop and a board decision, and I'll talk about the time frame for this in a few minutes. So on the infrastructure, it's obvious they're going to be talking about what are the project features, how does it stand up to the seismic risk of moving water across the delta, which is one of the key features of this program, is to reduce seismic risk. One of the items that's under discussion is the formation of a separate design and construction enterprise, probably through the state water contractors, as opposed to just having the Department of Water Resources manage the program. So that's something that's been under discussion for many years, and they continue to discuss some kind of a hybrid operation that would take the design and construction and do it for the Department of Water Resources, something that MET's been advocating for many, many years. Obviously, the cost estimate, again, this is roughly a $15 to $17 billion construction cost project, but that'll be updated. And of course, the schedule, and then really the risk of construction delays and cost increases as they move into construction. So that's the physical infrastructure white paper. That would be the first of the three that they would develop. The second would be operational, and this is really, really important. This is not operations like you normally think about, because really the operational constraints that will be put on the project will really determine what the benefit is and what the yield is, and all the economics and the cost benefit all boil down to these operational constraints. And really what we're talking about here is the biological opinions, which will be issued by mainly the federal regulatory agencies. You have both NOAA Fisheries and Fish and Wildlife Service will be doing these biological opinions, mainly for the protection of fish, smelt, and salmon. And really the criteria that get put into those biological opinions really will, again, determine the benefit of the project, and really the range of the supply and the expected yield and the water quality of the program. So these biological opinions are critical to the overall effectiveness of the program. And then the other thing that's seen as a big advantage of this project is the ability to manage water transfers through the delta. Having a second way to move water through the delta is seen as very beneficial in terms of the ability to move water through the delta. Right now it's very difficult to move water through the delta with the current conveyance, so the ability to enhance water transfers is seen as a key advantage of the program. So that's the second white paper. The third white paper would be on the actual cost allocation and how it would be financed. Of course, the first decision point is how will the cost be split between the state and federal water projects. Roughly 55% state, 45% federal is what's been talked about, but none of that's been finalized. And then once that split between the two projects is agreed upon, then how will the cost be allocated among the state water contractors, which of course MWD is the largest of. And then bringing that down to what really matters is what would that cost share then mean to the rate, to MWD's rates, and to our cost per family or single family household. So that'll all be part of the cost and allocation finance. And then they'll bring all this together after they've done those three white papers in a board workshop, and again present all the information, talk about all the issues, and then bring it to the board for a decision. So this is time frame wise, this is kind of how they've looked at the time frame. What they're going to try to do is make sure that they don't start the process too early so that the information doesn't become stale. And so really the key driver of the schedule when MET will start doing this is when do they expect those federal biological opinions to be issued. That's what they're going to back up from. So MET is continually monitoring that process, and when they think it's getting close to the time when the biological opinions will be issued, then they'll start this process. And the process, what the vertical dashed lines there indicate is those are 1 month periods. So you can see that this process will take about 3 or 4 months when they start it. And the earliest they will start it now is June So, the earliest this process would be completed would then be probably August or September. But again, they won't start until they're pretty certain that the biological opinions are imminent, and so that the information is fresh. So I think that completes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Is of the three white papers I was going to ask you, Kevin, you may have already answered, is the biological opinion the most, will take the longest?
Well, the biological opinions are being written by the state, by the federal regulatory agencies,
right,
by the NOAA fisheries, and so Met's not writing those, but they're obviously monitoring and reviewing those, and really what those say really determines how much benefit you get out of the program.
So will those take the longest in your opinion then?
Well, they've been under work, with the transition to the Trump administration. It's not clear to anybody, I don't think, when the federal agencies will issue these, and I think that's part of the uncertainty really, is when will these get issued.
Yeah, those seem like those would be that white paper would be the hardest, and then the construction and the cost share would be somewhat a little easier. So, do you have a timeline in the back of your mind of when MWD would be ready for this?
Well,
or the state would be ready for this?
Again, the earliest that Met expects this to start would be June at this point, and
June of this year.
To start this 3 or 4 month process, June of this year. So this could be done by August or September.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's notable that the Secretary of Interior met with the governor last week or the week before, so maybe there's some agreement at that level as to when these biological opinions will get issued.
Could the work being done by the State Water Board regarding water quality out of the, you want to talk a little bit about that? Would that affect this whole issue?
Absolutely. That's a key part of it too, and we're of course watching that closely, but those delta outflow requirements are also a key part of this decision. So you have a lot of moving pieces, and I think we've talked about Aqua and MWD's issue with regard to the State Water Board process being somewhat arbitrary, but clearly if the State Water Board establishes high delta outflow requirements, then that negates the benefits of this program. So yeah, there's a lot of things in play.
So how do you work forward with the biological opinions and then have the state say, well, it doesn't matter, we're going to have unimpaired flows, and therefore, how do you?
I can't say it any better than you did. It's a very complicated thing, and there are a lot of players and a lot of moving pieces, and Met's doing the best job they can of trying to figure out when some of these things are going to get resolved. It's very complex. I think you've nailed it.
Isn't the governor behind this though?
Yes.
Wants the California fix?
Absolutely,
So the governor.
yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kevin, one comment. At the end of the day, as prepared as MWD is, we still need those biological opinions. That, so to speak, kicks the ball off.
Yes, that's what really kicks it off, is because what those biological opinions have, they have all these operating criteria in their outflow standards and all that. So those are really the key to the whole thing. I think everything drives off of those. And again, those are coming from NOAA Fisheries and Fish and Wildlife Service.
Thanks.
One of the issues that's been going on for years is, of course, the fisheries.
Yes.
And what, is it going to be harm or not harm? Are they going to remove anything? So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, and that's what those biological opinions will really be addressing, is what are the criteria for operating and protecting the fish at the same time.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 21.
Yeah, just a couple of quick updates. One is on the budget process. We had a presentation, I believe it was on April 12th, to the purveyors on the budget. It was our first unveiling of the budget, and we have got input on that. We've worked on it since then. We have a workshop with the board this Thursday, and it is a workshop. We expect to be able to answer any questions you have and go into whatever detail you need at that time. And I think you should have, that has been released, posted already, so everybody should have a copy of it, so you have a bit of time to look into it. Any questions you have before then, please give me a call anytime. But if not, I look forward to a vigorous and intense workshop on Thursday. Any questions on where we're on the budget?
Question?
Are we going to get more information in that one page that we got?
You're going to get a complete presentation on the detail between any of it. I don't think there's a report that goes with it.
Like I say, I haven't seen any of that. All I've got is that one page.
Yeah, it's just the numbers in there right now, no narrative. But again, in the presentation, we didn't attach the presentation, I guess. So in the presentation, we'll go into the detail behind each. And like I said, this is a workshop, it's not an action, so any information you need beyond that, we'd be glad to give you.
Kevin, in reference to Director Hawkins' question, if we have any questions in preparation for the workshop, we should submit those to you ahead of the workshop. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, during the workshop, I mean, it is a workshop. I anticipate there'll be a lot of questions, but anything you tell me ahead of time enables us to get a little better prepared.
So we should submit any things we'd like ahead of time, correct?
If you could, that'd be great. Yeah, you can. But again, workshops are hopefully an interaction between staff and the board, and we can each learn. On the next time, I want to talk briefly about there's no other questions on the budget, about the operations of the finance department. And by the way, Dorette she's upstairs? Okay. Dorette is back. Dorette was out ill last week, and we're glad to have her back this week. And we have Mr. Rob Gergers, a consultant, who's been helping out with us for the last month. We also have PFM under contract now to do two things. One is to help us address our credit watch issue, and the second is to look over the overall operation of the department and make sure that the way we're doing it now and what we've done in the last 3 or 4 months has been correct. Just a bit of an audit anytime you have a significant unplanned change like that. It's a prudent thing to do. We have received to date 14 resumes, is it? 14 resumes. We expect a couple more for the CFO position. And once we have got a good number in, if we see good candidates, then we will set up interviews and that. If we don't have good candidates, we're going to re-advertise or whatever. It's important that we get the right person in. So we're not looking at speed here, we're looking at trying to do it right. The other thing we have in the finance department, we have some end of the year issues. We did approve, as you know, the CAFR was approved last month, and the budget, the audit were both approved. And the credit agencies also want to see a cost to complete. In other words, a cost through the end of this year, which is underway, and we should have that completed this week. Then they want to see next year's budget. And those are the key issues that they're looking at. So we should be ready to that with some input from PFM. We should be ready early May to respond to them. It may even mean going up and meeting with some of them in San Francisco. But,
excuse me, Kevin, I apologize. What were those 3 things again you just mentioned besides CAFR?
The CAFR, they want to know whether the CAFR and the audit were complete. They want to know what the cost to complete is going to be for this year. In other words, what we project our end of the year financials are, and they want to see the budget for next year.
Okay.
So those are any reasonable things for them to want. So that's where we are in the operation of the finance department through a lot of hard work. And I'd also, we had commended Angel. A couple of people have been a mainstay with it. Peggy Williams, as always, has pitched in and done whatever is necessary in that department. Sharon Kumar has. And our secret member of the finance department, you would never know it, is actually Mr. Albert Plimpton, who had worked in that years ago and has been able to help us take in charge of some of the issues we've had in the last month or so. So a nice team effort by everybody there, and I'd like to commend them. And that's all I have on the finance for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 23, information on water efficiency retrofit potential on public sites.
Good morning, directors. This is my item, and it'll be a PowerPoint presentation that I have for you today. I'm trying to see where I'm going to look. They don't look right. So here in front of you, you see a map of our service area. We have some icons, little flags, as well as little dots, and they all have something that they mean. The tan dots are the retrofits that we did in 2016. The red dots are the retrofits we did in 2014, and the flags represent audits. These are audits that we did as part of the DOE grant back in 2014, and the mostly completed, or most recently completed, DWR grant that we just completed in December. The reason why that I show you this is as we're moving forward on Prop 84, we just kicked it off in January. We want to make sure that we're strategic as far as the sites that we retrofit. And so we asked ourselves, I worked with the GIS department, we wanted to identify potential recycled water sites, obviously the existing recycled water sites that have been audited, sites that have been retrofitted, sites that are not within recycled water sites and are not retrofitted. And as far as that item, we were looking at the proximity of 500 feet. And lastly, you see there the percentage of sites that are not recycled water sites and are not retrofitted. So that's the line that I focus on as far as we move forward with Prop 84 and we review applications that were received by school districts and cities. So we're looking at approximately 332 sites within our service area, and as far as percentage, 43.1%. Obviously, I will not be able to do all of these sites with one grant, but as we move forward and we receive more grant opportunities, this gives us an outline of where the need is and what is the layout of our service area as far as where we're going to focus on recycled water and where we can focus on assisting agencies with potable water efficiency. No longer conservation since we're out of a drought. Now it's water efficiency. Are there any questions?
Questions?
I have a request. If you would email me this report,
Sure.
please.
No problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, directors.
Thank you. Item 24, outreach activities.
Good morning, directors. I will be presenting the activities that took place during the first quarter of the year. That's inclusive of the months of January through March. So starting with the education program, this is an opportunity for us to pique students' interest in our water supply. During the first quarter, we reached 13 school districts by providing 256 classes to over 8,900 students. And similar to education, we have been very active with our legislative offices. In the first quarter, staff participated in the Aqua Legislative Symposium, where water issues were discussed, and it also served as an opportunity to meet with several of our legislative offices, as you see listed on your screen. In addition to the symposium, staff attended the legislative appointment workshops for Assemblymember Cristina Garcia and Speaker Anthony Rendon. Continuing the active participation in our community, we engaged with several stakeholder groups, including attending the Contract Cities board meeting, several BizFed events, and the MWD member agency meetings, as well as a crisis communication exercise for the member agencies. Moving to media relations, we released 4 press releases in the first quarter that had an average open rate of 25%, which is in line with agencies similar to our size, according to MailChimp, which is the distribution service we use. Another element of media relations is social media. Combining Facebook and Twitter, we had over 80,600 impressions, and this is defined as the number of times a user sees our posts. And the most popular post was information on the damage to the Oroville Dam spillway. Moving to stakeholder engagement, we had 3 caucus workshops, featuring a panel to discuss the California water fix and both the benefits and challenges, as well as MWD's CFO to discuss their agency's focus for the year, and an update from River LA on the revitalization of the LA River. For the Speakers Bureau, this is an opportunity where the district goes out into the community. We made 8 presentations covering careers in the water industry, the district's programs, information on Oroville Dam, and the California water fix.
And another form of participation is through outreach events. Staff participated in 12 events ranging from State of the Cities to cleanups and Earth Day. And to close, through the bottled water program, we're also able to reach several community-based groups. During the first quarter of the year, we provided 291 cases to 36 events. And this concludes the update for the first quarter. If you have any questions. Okay. Thank you.
Item 25, closed session. Do we have closed session?
Yes, Mr. President. One item for closed session today. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, Public Employee Annual Performance Evaluation, position title, General Manager, as required per the terms of the General Manager's Employment Agreement. Closed session note. The Brown Act prohibits the disclosure of confidential information acquired in a closed session by any person present and offers various remedies to address willful breaches of confidentiality. These include injunctive relief, disciplinary action against an employee, and referral of a member of the legislative body to the grand jury. It is incumbent upon all those attending lawful closed sessions to protect the confidentiality of those discussions. Only the legislative body, acting as a body, may agree to divulge confidential closed session information. Regarding attorney-client privilege communications, the entire body is the holder of the privilege, and only a majority vote of the entire body can authorize the waiver of the privilege. We're now ready for closed session. Thank you.
Counselor, your report?
The board met in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, Public Employee Annual Performance Evaluation, position title General Manager, and there is no reportable action.
Kevin, you have anything?
No, sir. Oh, excuse me, there is one comment, GM's comment. There will not be a caucus meeting during the month of May. The next Central Basin Caucus will be held on June 7th. The Central and Upper St. Gabriel Basin Caucus will be held on June 7th.
Oh, and I would like to mention, too, this couple things quickly. I spoke with Nixon Peabody, the ethics officer that manages the ethics hotline. They confirmed there were no new reports on the ethics hotline since our last board meeting on March 27, 2017. And for anyone who will be at the Aqua Conference in Monterey in May, you're all invited. Nasseman is hosting a reception at the Perry House, which is just down the street from the conference on Tuesday, May 9th from 6:30 to 8:30. Complimentary hors d'oeuvres and drinks for anyone who'd like to attend.
I'll start to my right. You have any comments?
No additional comments. Thank you.
None, sir, today. Thank you.
I just want to say for the record that I do appreciate all the work that staff does regarding their staff reports. Sometimes they don't comment on that, but it doesn't mean I don't review everything, so thank you for that.
Yes, I just want to report, is this where I do the report?
Yes.
Yeah. The Aqua Legislative Symposium in March, where we did our legislative visits, and also the Washington, D.C. trip, where we did our legislative visits, January the 2nd through the 5th. Thank you.
And I just want to report out that I did go to the JPIA Executive Committee meeting in February 6th and 7th of this year to try to get our insurance back.
I have none. If not, meeting's adjourned.